Buddy JC here, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Now, before we get into it, I just want to confirm you guys can hear me good, that the mic is working okay. Um, so, just a quick mic check before we really get started. I see Paul's in the house, Lord Venger, Henry G. Phil's in the house. What's up? But yeah, somebody sound off. You can hear me and hear me good? Okay. Just want to make sure. All right, cool. So welcome everybody to Thursday night stream, and tonight, we're just kind of gonna shoot the shit about latest happenings in action figures. I guess the big news, the most recent news, the official non-funding of the Hasbro HasLab campaign, and of course Mattel changing things up a little bit on their new Eternia playset yesterday. So Salome has joined us, everybody. But I'm curious, I don't know if we ever took a poll here. We've talked about the Hasbro Ghost Rider HasLab, but how many people had actually backed that campaign, or did anybody here back that campaign? Corn Viper, what's the coolest news of this week? I don't know. It's been a pretty slow week. As we kind of head into the holidays, I feel like news tends to kind of slow down a little bit. But obviously, last weekend we had MCM, so we had some cool reveals there from Hasbro. Jerry says he didn't back it. Rule says I believe you, and Phil. So you guys, okay. So are you guys like, was it like, yeah, I'm backing it? Or is it like, I'm really bummed that this didn't get funded? Arthur says was never going to back it. Engine of Vengeance died so Desaurus could live. I am not backing the Transformer one, not because I think it's bad or anything. It's just I've never been much into the Japanese Transformers. I didn't back last year's Star Saber one either. So I mean, I think it's a decent price, and I feel like if you backed the Star Saber one last year, there's probably a good bet you're going to back it this year. This year the Desaurus one this year, but but for me personally, just because I've never been into those Transformers, I know very little about them. They just not something I was that interested in backing. I gotta be honest. I was watching the Mattel live stream yesterday on the new Eternia playset, and it actually kind of had me tempted a little bit to end up going on and getting one. I think I'm gonna wait and see if it reaches 10,000 backers, so that the Elder figure and the King Grace, because obviously I didn't back it in the first week, so the only way I would get the King Grayskull is if it hits 10,000. So I'm still on the fence, and a lot of my issue with the Eternia playset is just space. But it was looking pretty cool when I was watching that live stream yesterday. I think they actually did a pretty good job with that live stream. And I know some people were upset that they ended up throwing in the King Grayskull. Obviously they advertised it originally as an early bird figure, but I think it's very smart it was a smart thing for them to do, because the thing had kind of gone to a snail's pace, and I don't think without King Grayskull, I don't think the Eternia playset would hit 10,000. Now, I'm not saying that it will definitely hit 10,000 even with Grayskull, but I feel like if there was any chance, if there's any chance of that playset hitting 10,000, it needs, the Gray Skull needs to be included for everybody. So, if you were like somebody who backed it in the first week and you're like, oh man, that sucks, Mattel lied to us. The way I would look at it is, if you want the Elder figure, which is the second stretch goal that will only be included if it reached 10,000 backers, I think this is your best chance of getting the Elder figure on top of the King Grayskull. So I feel like people who are getting mad are kind of not seeing the big picture there, that you're going to actually get more for your money with them including the King Grayskull for everybody. I don't see much of an advantage of withholding that for, I get that they build it as an early bird thing. I personally think the early bird concept is a stupid one. I feel like it killed the HasLab Ghost Rider. Now, I feel like if Hasbro had acted a little bit faster when it failed back on September 23rd, when it failed to reach the minimum number to unlock the human form Robbie Reyes, I feel like if Hasbro had acted a little faster there, it had been ready right when that happened to announce either, I still don't really understand why they just didn't include the figure, but even the head sculpt, if they had announced that day, I'm not saying it would definitely have gotten backed, but I'm saying it would not have started bleeding the backers that it did, which is what really kind of was the final nail in the coffin for that campaign. It still would have been a tough, get to the 9,000 backers, but I feel like Hasbro waited way too long in reacting to the early bird figure not being included. So I feel like here with Mattel, they're being proactive. They saw they were down to a week, and they saw that the backer count on the Eternia playset had moved to a snail's pace. So I think what they did was smart. And again, I won't say 100% that campaign will get to 10,000 backers, but I'm saying the chances are a lot better that it will get to 10,000 backers with the King Grayskull being available to everybody who backs it. Because you can sit there and say, well, you should have backed it the first week if you wanted the King Grayskull figure. But the reality is what a lot of people see it as is, well, I wasn't ready to back it in the first week, and I don't feel like I need to be pressured, but I'm paying the exact same money that those who backed it in the first week paid, and I should get the same amount of stuff. And I feel like that's a more fair, reasonable stance to be, viewing this as opposed to being like, well, you should have just backed it in the first week if you wanted the King Grayskull. Not everybody, has just, $600 lying around and can just, spend that kind of money on a whim. So I feel like the early bird figure is just, it's a mistake all around. Include as much as you can. So including the King Grayskull is a good thing, but make it available to everybody. I don't, yeah, maybe the Eternia playset got backed a little bit faster than it would have if it wasn't the early bird figure, but I feel like they would have still gotten as many backers by the end of this campaign, whether the early bird figure was included or not. And then when you look at how Hasbro did it, it really had a very negative effect on the campaign because people started bailing left and right once they realized that the early bird figure was not going to be included. Right. I agree with you, Curtis, that the campaign was doing great in that first week, and then the moment the early bird figure was no longer available, the backer count, just came to almost a standstill. So obviously it got them to over 8,000. So it got them to the first stretch goal. But, I mean, it's hard to say for sure because generally these things will get, I mean, even right now as I'm looking at it, the Eternia campaign is at 8,407 backers. So it's still got it's got about, just under 1,600 to go to get to 10,000. And, it took about a day to get about 100 backers. Since yesterday when they announced the King Grayskull was going to be available to everybody, if it got to 10,000, it's gotten maybe just a little bit over 100 backers. And we're down to 6 days. So it is definitely going to take that. I think it's going to take that push at the end to get over 10,000. But again, I would say that's much more likely to happen now with the King Grayskull being included than had they not included it for everybody. Jerry, no. Mondo Battle Cat was 400 bucks. So, and I did end up. I was like, I got down to the last hour on Monday. I think it was Monday, and I was like down to the last hour, and I was like, because that was another one where it was like on the fence. I already got I'd already gotten the He-Man figure, the deluxe He-Man figure, the 12-inch He-Man figure, and so I was like, do I want to get Battle Cat? Am I gonna have space for Battle Cat? You know, and I was like, I kept going back and forth. Well, I got the He-Man. I got to have Battle Cat for him to ride, right? So I ended up getting Battle Cat in the last hour. But yeah, that Battle Cat, and I mean, that to me was poor planning on these companies' part. Mattel and Mondo should have gotten together and been like, hey, we need to space these out a little bit more, instead of offering them almost at the exact same time. But there you go. Rashid says he just wants Hasbro to release Mephisto and Madeline down the road. Just make them online exclusive. I won't say that's impossible, especially for Madeline Pryor. I almost, especially since they made the toned down version of Madeline Pryor, I think there's a very good possibility we will see that figure released down the road. Mephisto, I don't know. I won't say it's 100% impossible, but definitely with Mephisto, I feel like it's less feasible. But any of those figures, I think the earliest we would see them is 2 years from now. Hasbro's pretty much said that they've already planned out their line for the next 2 years. So I think if they're going to try and work any of those figures from the HasLab into releasing them some other way, it's probably going to be at least about 2 years before we see that. Oh yeah, you're right. 500. Yeah, so many high priced items lately. Yeah, it was 500. You're right. 600 for Eternia, 500 for Battle Cat. Crazy, crazy, crazy. And then Mattel, not something I'm personally interested in, but just today they put up those Shogun He-Man figures, $300 a piece. So the He-Man and the Faker figure, which are about 2 feet tall, you know, I mean, I've talked about this before, and you can definitely see this hobby is going in a direction where companies are more and more looking to cater to smaller demographics who have more money to spend, that they have 500-600 bucks that they can drop in a heartbeat. I mean, you can just see that with many of these companies, that they are catering to what is a smaller demographic, because obviously there aren't nearly as many people who can easily spend that much money on action figures. But they definitely seem to be targeting those smaller demographics of people with more disposable income to spend. 3M says he's happy with his $40 Masterverse Battle Cat. MK Solid, do I think McFarlane's trying to do too much at once? I think it's getting kind of messy and not having the Kickstarter. I don't know what happened to the Kickstarter thing, so it's hard to say on that. But I'm not sure what you mean by messy. One thing I'm getting a little annoyed with McFarlane is all the exclusives. All the good DC Multiverse figures are ending up being like Target or Walmart exclusives, and that to me is getting a little tiresome. They just announced the Dead Man figure, which will be a Target exclusive. They just announced the Aquaman, which that one for me personally is not as much of one that I'm that interested in. But the recent Shazam, the recent better looking Kyle Rayner Green Lantern figure, the Dead Man. I mean, all these exclusives is definitely getting a little annoying to me. But for the most part, I think McFarlane has been doing a lot of good things. They've been getting stuff out as opposed to having, long pre-order dates. So, it seems like most of the McFarlane stuff is seeing release within, a few weeks of it being solicited. So sometimes the stuff gets out there before they even solicit it. So I feel like on that end of things, McFarlane has been doing a pretty good job, but I definitely the increased number of exclusives of characters that I feel like are more interesting characters than just another Batman or what have you is getting a little irritating on the McFarlane front. Well, we don't know for sure that he's not doing another Kickstarter. We just that right now just seems to be in limbo. So, you know, he hasn't come out and said, you know what, we changed our mind and we're not going, even though I two different times I came out and told you guys we're going to be doing a Kickstarter, he hasn't since come out and said, you know what, we changed our mind and we're not doing one. He just hasn't, we obviously haven't seen it. And for whatever reason, I mean, they maybe scrapped it, I don't know. But if they've scrapped it, since they have already come out on two different occasions and told us they were doing a Kickstarter, it would definitely be nice if we got an update on whether or not there still plans to do a Kickstarter. But for now, at least, things seem to be on hold. Kyle says, yeah, just like doing another Spawn movie. Well, he's still out there, pimping the Spawn movie. So he according to Todd, things are going well on the Spawn movie front. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but KJ, yes, people are starting to get their Auto T NECA figures in the mail. I think the people who pre-ordered them on the website back in early October during the Collector Con have started to finally get them. I don't know if, the whole thing with the cards in the store with the kiosk and all that has been very confusing to me on exactly how that's supposed to be working. And I don't know if anybody, I mean, I would not feel comfortable going into it. First of all, it's kind of ridiculous that you're going into the store to scan and pay for a pre-order, essentially. Just put it on freaking online. But it's getting to the point of ridiculousness when now you're essentially asking people to go into the physical store to pre-order something. Either have the figures there for people to buy, or just put the pre-orders up on a website. Why it has to be on a special Auto T website and why it can't just be regular Walmart.com, I don't know. Or just put it on NECA's website or whatever. But I don't get the whole UPC card thing in the physical store. I feel like that's definitely just making people jump through extra hoops for no real reason. But yes, I know I didn't buy any of those figures. So for me personally, I had no bearing on me, but I know some people had expressed concern over those not having shipped, and it does look like they are shipping now. And I mean, I am not a fan of all of this digital crap, NFTs or whatever, however you want to wrap it up. I feel like NFTs are a big ripoff. Um, but you see more and more companies, especially toy companies, McFarlane, NECA, Hasbro, I mean Funko, they're all into this NFT thing. So 3M says is getting tired of exclusive items in general. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's always better if it's a general release than an exclusive, but for a while there, like many of the exclusives had been somewhat I won't say easy, but like didn't sell out in 5 seconds. Now, of course, Walmart, you know, even if you get it from Walmart, it's, are they going to ship it in a paper envelope so that it comes all damaged? Who knows? Are they going to cancel your pre-order like 5 months, down the road? Are they going to come back and say, oh, we canceled your pre-order for no real reason? I mean, dealing with Target and Walmart is ridiculous, but unfortunately, the toy companies are beholden to those retailers, and they're not going to turn their backs on them. So, we can complain and bitch about exclusives until we're blue in the face, but they're not going to go away. But with the recent McFarlane ones, they've been much more difficult to get. I mean, Target hasn't even put online the Green Lantern, the Kyle Rayner Gold Label Green Lantern. I don't know if they're going to put the Dead Man online. I assume they probably will, but I don't know that for sure. Hey Rodney, what's up? KJ says Todd is a mob. Graham says, got G.I. Joe Zaymont yesterday from UPS by way of Amazon. And when it arrived, the packaging was, well, that sucks. I mean, that can happen on occasion, but at least every action figure I've gotten from Amazon, at least Amazon ships it in a box. Unlike Walmart that half the time ships them in envelopes. I mean, that's not even trying. When you're shipping an action figure, I mean, and to make it even worse, like, Walmart tries to sell us on, oh, look, we're having another collector con for you guys, for you collectors. We're doing this collector con event. So they specifically market to the collector demographic, and then they turn around and they ship the action figures out in envelopes. I mean, that's just the epitome of, we don't really give a fuck about you. We're going to do whatever we want. I'm waiting for Sergeant Slaughter to arrive from Big Bad Toy Store. According to the FedEx tracking, it'll be here on Saturday. Originally, it said Friday, and then it got pushed to Saturday, so I was a little bummed on that. But I'm definitely looking for the Sarge to be arriving here very soon. And I got the Mojo box set from Hasbro Pulse the other day as well. So Jerry, uh, the Arkham. Oh, the Arkham one. Okay, I was thinking, and you were talking about the Batman Family 5 pack, and I was gonna say, well, the Nightwing head sculpt on that 5 pack looks horrible. KJ, what are the chances of Super 7 Ultimates Technodrome? I don't know, man. They need to get us the Thunder Tank first, and then the Party Van. I think before they start trying to take, maybe tackle something like a Technodrome. So, the Thunder Tank got pushed to next year now. So earliest we're going to see the Thunder Tank arrive is like early next year, and that's assuming it doesn't get delayed again. So. I mean, I think it's certainly possible, but I would much rather see Super 7 get us some of the stuff like the Thunder Tank and the Party Van, um, out to folks before they tackle on another big project like that. Commander Bond. I, you know, I don't know if that thing's ever going to get released. Mezco is like, they don't talk about it, so I have no idea. I mean, I'm keeping my hopes up that one day it gets released, but honestly, I would not be surprised if that ended up never getting released. Hopefully, they'll refund our money if that ends up happening. And has anyone tried to cancel their pre-order? And has Mezco refused to refund people's money? I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say that they have, but I don't know if anyone's actually tried to cancel that pre-order. I'm just gonna wait. I bet it'll show up when it shows up, but Mezco has basically said, yeah, we're not going to tell you any updates on that. No, 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 no. Super 7 has problems, but no, Super 7 is not Shocker Toys. I think the GI Joe Ultimates Wave One, I think got delayed. They got that con exclusive bat out, but Jason, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly I don't follow Silverhawks that closely. It's not something I ever collected as a kid or anything, so I don't know. Again, I feel like Super 7 needs to, any kind of vehicle or playset, they need to hold off announcing anything new until they get the stuff out that they've already solicited. Of course, like NECA, you know, we were supposed to get announcements on those sewer diorama sets from NECA by now, and that didn't happen. So obviously that's been delayed as well. So a lot of delays from all these various companies. Victor Perez, Shocker. Uh, we could spend a whole live stream talking about Shocker toys, but they were a fly by night toy company that got some notoriety because they got Toy Fair magazine to cover their products. I believe their very first product was something called like a shoulder action figure, like an action figure that sat on your shoulder. I kid you not. But they were a company that basically didn't deliver on a lot of products that they had promised to people. Emmett says, "Screw Super 7 charging $55 for worthless snarf that's not worth $20." It sucks. I mean, I went on and pre-ordered Snarf because I got to have them for my collection. But I definitely I'm there with you that it definitely sucks. And they've already said that they're going to do the same thing with Wily Kit and Wily Cat. So individual releases for those two, which I mean they didn't specifically say $55, but I would assume that's what they're going to cost. I'm very glad that I have the Mattel ones so that I don't need to get the Super 7 Wily Kit and Wily Cat. Robert, am I looking forward to Wakanda Forever? I mean, I definitely plan on seeing it, but I can't say it like I am like just super excited for it. Hopefully it'll be good, but I guess the hype level for me isn't like off the charts in any way. I think probably as far as MCU goes, I'm looking kind of more ahead to getting towards the end of Phase 5. I think towards the end of Phase 5 and Phase 6 is when things are going to start getting good, really good in the MCU again. Thunderbolts, the Avengers movies, um, even like Ant-Man the Wasp movie. I mean, that's obviously going to have some ramifications with Kang, but I watched that trailer and I was like, this doesn't have me super hyped at the moment. So I don't know. Kyle says the Namor movie. Well, I mean, obviously Namor is going to play a large role, and I'll be honest with you, I've never been like this huge Namor fan. I always found him to be kind of boring. Even the John Byrne series of Namor, which was kind of my first real exposure to the character, it was okay, but I didn't think it was like fantastic. So he always just comes off as a pompous dick in the comics, and so I don't know. I just and I saw like some headlines that said like where the director or I forget who it was, but somebody said that like somebody started rumors that Doctor Doom was going to be in the Black Panther movie, and they've come out and said no, that's not true, and he was never going to be in the movie. So I mean, what a shock! An MCU rumor that didn't pan out to be true, but I'm not surprised at all that Doctor Doom wasn't going to show up in that movie. John, I have not played Gotham Knights. I don't even. I've yet to get a PlayStation 5 because I've yet to be able to find one at cost. Well, that console's been out for like over 2 years now, and I've yet to be able to find. I mean, I'm not going to pay secondary market prices for that thing, and 3M says, well, I mean, obviously they're very similar characters, but I always found Namor or Aquaman to be a little more interesting than Namor. I think probably because Aquaman always had a much more, growing up for me watching like the Super Friends and stuff, Aquaman was a more critical part of like the Justice League and Super Friends teams, whereas Namor, he's been on the Avengers at times, but he's never really been a huge team player or anything like that. So I've always I've always liked Aquaman a little bit better than Namor. I did see that rumor floating around at one point. I think Howard Stern started that rumor. Namor was created like 10. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. But I mean, they're very similar characters. I don't know, it's not about who came first, who copied who, but they are both very similar characters to a certain degree. I mean, obviously they're both characters that can live underwater, and they, all that jazz. But they have very different personalities. At least, I mean, I guess Aquaman has gotten more pompous in later years. Michael says, I'll definitely check it out. I mean, it's on Disney Plus. I can watch it for, I already subscribed to Disney Plus, so of course I'm going to check it out. Am I like super hyped for it? No, but I thought it was kind of funny, with Kevin Bacon, or Kevin Bacon, Kevin Bacon. I thought, it was funny that they have him in there. Jerry, no, but he was in the end. He was in the end at the end of Peacemaker. I think Gunn is pretty much done. I think he's pretty much finished his work with Guardians of the Galaxy. That movie's, for the most part, already been completed. So Julia says, "Yeah, that is way off topic." But no, I have not watched Dahmer. Power Turtles. Salome was here. Yeah, Salome. I don't know. The camera's a little higher, but Salome's in the chair back there. She's taking a cat nap. Power Turtles. So nothing specific, but Hasbro during their 1027 event last week did say that there would be new Ghostbuster products coming in 2023. So they are not done with Ghostbusters. So, maybe you'll get your animated series Ghostbusters next year. Yeah, that was a little disappointing about Cavill. I don't know. I mean, I can understand Cavill probably Superman being more appealing than The Witcher. Probably more money involved with the Superman, the role of Superman than the Witcher series. But it would have been nice if they could have figured out a way for him to do both. Classified mole rats. What I have no idea what you're talking about, Neil. Commander Bond. Any thoughts on the long box hero figures? They're being sold through Big Bad Toy Store, so that's a good thing. But it's not a scale that I spend a lot of time on these days. So for me personally, they're not terribly appealing. But I mean, I think if you're into those characters and you like that kind of retro feel, then I think they're worth checking out. But for me personally, it's not really something I'm personally planning on collecting. Well, KJ, sounds like we're gonna get another Superman movie before we get like anything like another Justice League movie. But I really feel like right now, I mean, I will give Warner Brothers some credit that it sounds like they're at least starting to put the pieces in place to maybe create an actual cohesive DC universe. But I still think even with like the Black Adam after credit scene, they're still just kind of winging it where they really have not come up with a long-term game plan for what they're going to do with these characters. So until that actually happens, I'm still a little skeptical on the DC universe. I like Black Adam for the most part, and again, bringing James Gunn in to kind of like be the the Kevin Feige, DC's Kevin Feige, I think probably is not a bad idea, but whether they really have a long-term comprehensive plan of what they want to do with Henry Cavill, I mean, I don't think they have any kind of story written out for another Superman movie or anything like that. They've indicated that they're going to do another Superman movie, and obviously they're bringing back Cavill, but when they created that Black Adam after credit scene, I feel like it was a last minute thing, really more so to just build up hype for Black Adam, which is why I feel like it leaked out a week before the movie was even released, um, because they were trying to build up hype for Black Adam. But let's hope that they get something good going, and we see a return of the Justice League, and the next Superman movie ends up being good. Hopefully, I wouldn't mind seeing a showdown between Black Adam and Superman, or Shazam and Black Adam. I mean, Michael, there. I don't have it on in front of me, but yeah, that wave leaked out a month or so ago. I think Kang's on there, if I remember correctly. I mean, it would be weird if he wasn't. Some of my favorite figures for 2022 so far. Oh well, most of the GI Joe Classified. That's definitely my favorite. Been my favorite line for 2022. The Masterverse, Masters of the Universe line has had some pretty solid figures. I really like the Hordak and the She-Ra that they recently released, the deluxe figures. Um, even the Zodak figure that I just got here recently, and I'm not a huge Zodak fan, but that actually was a pretty nice. They did a pretty good job with that one. So Masterverse has been pretty solid here, and GI Joe Classified, the U.S. Agent Marvel Legend figure, I thought they did a good job with. So, and obviously U.S. Agent's a favorite character of mine. So, um, yeah, so those would be kind of my top favorites for 2022. Coco says Avengers versus Justice League would be great. I don't see that ever happen. I mean, if you just think about how difficult it is for like Sony and Disney to collaborate to do like Spider-Man. So could you see Warner Brothers and Disney with two different comic book companies being able to come together to do a comprehensive movie like that? I mean, it would be a huge blockbuster hit, but I feel like there's just way too much red tape that would get in the way for that ever to happen. Unless like Disney bought Warner Brothers or Warner Brothers bought Disney, or something along, if one of those corporations bought one of those comic, companies, then so both DC and Marvel fell under the same house, then it might happen. But that's the only way I would ever see that happening. Kyle, which are you talking about? Are you talking about when they combine like they combine the Marvel and the DC characters into like one character? Like they combined like Batman and Wolverine into one character. That thing, yeah, that was like that was all marketing. Yeah, I mean that was a DC. That, yeah. Are you talking? You're talking about the Avengers? I barely remember the Avengers Justice League thing that predated that. I remember the Teen Titans and the X Men crossover. Yeah, Dark Claw. Yeah, I remember it. I remember the artwork more than I remember the story. Doctor Strange. I thought Pierce Brosnan did a good job as Doctor Fate. I think I have that somewhere. That, but it's been years and years. Well, even look at that movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I mean, like that thing's in licensing limbo. I mean, I don't think anyone can really do any products for that movie because of that reason. Yeah, the Busick artwork. That's what I remember most, and it was some nice artwork. Yeah, they did, but reaction. But I would love to see like Ultimates. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit Ultimates? Yeah, the Kurt Busiek art for the Avengers Justice League was was really nice. I don't know. Supposedly there was an after credit scene that was supposed to give us a clue to Fate's Fate's fate, I guess you could say, but I haven't actually seen what that what that supposedly was. But didn't he do a I thought he did a cover. Maybe it was you're right, maybe it was George Perez. But the art was really nice. I guess yeah, George Perez. But yeah, the art was really nice on that. I mean like they're doing Batman and Spawn again, a crossover between those two. I have the original crossovers, and again, it's been like years since I read those, but I don't remember them being that great. I never got the Superman versus Hulk. I do have the Spider-Man and Superman crossover, which was like a really big giant comic book. I still have that, but I never got the Superman and Hulk. Or was it Batman? Was it Batman and Hulk? I don't know. There was an I'm not talking about the the when they combined all the characters, but I'm talking about like the first time they did like DC Marvel crossovers. They did them as these really big giant comics, and the first one was Superman and Spider-Man, and then there was a second one which was Hulk. I don't remember if it was Hulk and Superman or Hulk and Batman. Yeah, the original Superman Masters of the Universe crossover. I remember that too. Hulk versus Superman was a short fight during the Superman versus Spider-Man second issue. Batman. Okay. So I get all these confused. It's been like years and years since I've looked at those. But I think the only one that I have is the first Superman Spider-Man crossover. And I didn't buy that when it originally came out, but I bought it when I was a kid, but I like went to the comic book store and bought it as a back issue. Yeah, I think Superman was like was it because Skeletor used magic and Superman has a weakness against magic. I think 3M says, imagine being John Cena and seeing the Black Adam movie action. You know who? I guess you assume. I assume you mean because they got the Rock likeness much better than they did the John Cena one. I mean, those Rock Black Adam figures are a rarity for McFarlane. Those are like the only movie figures I've seen McFarlane do where they actually got the likenesses pretty good. Most of the movie likenesses on the movie DC Multiverse figures are not that great. Corn Viper, does anyone still go to the comic book stores? Mine closed down. I don't go. I mean, I don't read a lot of comics anymore, so no, I don't go to the comic book store that often. But I mean, I still have one down the road. I mean, there used to be a lot more in the '90s than there are today, but and I haven't seen him on here tonight. But Quinn's Comics is usually on here, so Corn Viper says lived in Virginia. You could count them on one hand. I guess it depends where in Virginia, because like Northern Virginia, there used to be a fair number of comic book stores, but Jerry says can't read comics on the iPad. When I read comics these days, it is usually digital versions. I don't usually buy physical comics anymore just because I mean I don't read a lot of comics anymore. I just they're so expensive and it's just hard to get into the stories for me personally. It's hard to get into the story. I have the Batman Judge Dredd. I remember that. And I remember the Batman versus Predator. So when I was in college and I still was reading comics fairly heavily, like where I went to college, there was the closest comic book store was like an hour away. So I every weekend I would drive to the town that had the comic book store. So I would drive like an hour just to get my comics. John, not right now, but they will return on the Big Bad Toy Store contest. And early next month, we're gonna do something. I'm gonna do a special Toys for Tots live stream, and we're gonna have some giveaways and stuff then. So Rashid Sanders. So I there's a comic book store that is literally like 10 minutes from my house, and then that particular store has two stores. So there's another store that's about 40 minutes away, and then I think there's a store. I think it's still there, in the other direction. That's like maybe 40 minutes away. But there used to be comic book stores like all over the place around here, like back in the '90s and stuff. I think the comic book stores that are still around today, I think they definitely have had to diversify more, like not just sell comics, but sell like action figures, a lot of trading card stuff, I definitely feel like comic book stores have had to adapt, the ones that are still around, and expand beyond just selling straight up comic books. John, I did see the I watched that last week. I thought it was great. Tales of the Jedi, those were awesome. If you haven't seen those Tales of the Jedi cartoon shorts, I definitely recommend you check them out. Everybody says Happy McFarlane is putting comic book backs in the toy aisle. That's how I got it. I didn't get into comics with comics being in the actual toy aisle, but it was toys that got me into comics because it was Transformers and GI Joe that originally got me reading comic books. But back then, you had to go to the comic book store, go to the magazine aisle to get those. So they weren't sold with the toys, but it was the toy lines that got me into reading books back in the day. Chuck, why does McFarlane Super 7 NECA get a pass on reuse, higher prices, less articulation, and Hasbro does not get the same concessions made for them? Well, that's a little bit of a trick question, Chuck, because first of all, I mean, everybody has different views on different things. So, but Hasbro makes a lot more products, so they cater to a wider audience who tends to be more vocal. Um, so I think that's probably the biggest reason why you hear more people complaining about Hasbro than maybe some of those other toy companies, just because they have a wider consumer base than those other companies. But I mean, if you go into a McFarlane Toy Facebook group or a NECA Facebook group or Super 7, I mean, you definitely hear people complain. Um, so I don't think any of those companies are free from people complaining about their products. And and we've talked about this before, and I think every one of those companies has strengths and weaknesses. You could say McFarlane has managed to keep their prices down more than Hasbro, which I agree with, but you also get very minimal accessories with McFarlane products. You have to buy, two of the same figure just to get alternate heads and things like that. So there's give and take. I think Marvel Legends have better articulation overall than a DC Multiverse figure, but that's not to say Hasbro products are perfect in any way, because they're not. But I think without, since everyone has different views and different opinions, it's hard to generalize it. But I think if you're saying why do you hear more people complaining about Hasbro as opposed to those other companies, I think it's simply just because Hasbro does more action figure lines and has, there's more people out there collecting Hasbro products than most of those other companies. Ultramagnetic Lion. My first comic books were off the newsstand at the pharmacy. My favorites were Marvel. That that is exactly same thing for me. My first comic books that I really got into was Transformers, and I got it was a multi. I had been I'd gone to the doctor, and then I had gotten sick, and then we went over to the Walgreens pharmacy to pick up the prescription that the doctor had prescribed. And I ended up getting this, it was a 3 pack that had issues 2, 3, and 4. It didn't have issue 1 in it, but it was a 3 pack with the issues 2, 3, and 4 of the Transformer comic. And so I got those and I started reading those, and that's really what first got me hooked into comics. And I got those because I was already into the Transformer toys. But yes, pharmacy, the magazine rack at the pharmacy is exactly how I got into comics as well. JC, I thought the Mattel presentation was the greatest hype promotion live stream. Honestly, I wanted to back the project and not an Origins fan. I thought they did a pretty good job with it. Um, I was there. I said this at the beginning of the live stream that I'm actually, if it gets to 10,000 backers, because I'm not going to back it unless I know it's going to include the King Grayskull figure and the Elder figure. So I'm going to wait and see if it gets to 10,000 backers. But if it does, I'm actually somewhat considering getting that playset. And originally I was not because of space constrictions, which is still a concern. And then, it just didn't seem cool enough to me. But they did a good job showing that thing off. The girl, the lady that they had hosting it, I thought did a pretty good job. I was curious because I was like, where did they get this lady from? And I don't, I'm not, I've never followed the, I forget what she had been in. I mean, I know she'd been on IGN and some of like the videos. Like if you go look at her social media, she does a lot of content for, it seems like, for video games and stuff. And I've never followed much of that. So so I wasn't really familiar with her, but so I checked her out, and I did have this thought that, like, why they went and got somebody who really has no connection with action figures and such, to host this thing. Like, you've got somebody like Pixel Dan, and I feel like he would have been a more logical choice. Somebody like that would have been a more logical choice to get to host that event, um, than the lady that they got. But I thought she did a pretty good job, and a lot better than like those guys that Hasbro hired to do the PulseCon thing. Curtis Lang, I don't know. I really don't know where I'm gonna get, if I end up getting it. Where will I put it? I don't know. And I saw I saw a lot of people asking in that live stream. They were like, "Are you going to make connection pieces so you can connect, like have Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain on the sides of the playset, like, and have them connect somehow?" And they didn't answer that question. But I was like, I'm like, I was wondering what people were even like envisioning when they said like connecting them. Like I could see you, if you got all three play sets, I could see you setting them up so that you have Grayskull on this side, Eternia in the middle, and then Snake Mountain on the other side. But I don't know why you would want connecting pieces unless they were talking about the monorail. Like if you could build out the monorail so it went around the entire all three play sets, which I guess because the monorail pieces, if you bought more than one Eternia playset, you could expand the monorail. um because they showed it where like you could have the monorail just go around the one middle tower, or you could have it go around all three towers. So I'm thinking, if you wanted to have a monorail go around all three playsets, you could do that if you wanted to buy more than one Eternia playset. But I was really kind of wondering why you would want some piece of plastic connecting Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain to the Eternia playset. 3M says, never trust anyone who has IGN as a place of employment. I'm not sure. I mean, IGN is, I mean, it didn't start out that way years ago, but I mean, IGN's just a corporate media site. I think, I don't know if they still are, but I want to say they were originally, they had been bought out at one point by CBS, but I said monorail, didn't I? Chuck says Mattel uses the same buck for every Masters of the Universe Origins figure and Masterverse. I'm a huge fan of Masterverse, but I don't think they use the same buck for every Masterverse figure. They do for the Origins, but they did that with the original toy line, and that's what the Origins is based on, so you can't really fault them for that. I think they differentiate some of the molds on the Masterverse though. In fact, I know they do. Not saying they don't reuse parts, but they're not all the exact same buck on every single figure. Well, yeah, IGN is definitely owned by a corporation. I mean, it started years and years and years ago. It started out essentially as a fan site type deal, but they got bought out long, long time ago. And I mean, the lady that lady that they I forget her name, but the lady that was hosting the Masters of the Universe thing. I mean, she's she was hired. I mean, I have no doubt she was hired to host that. I'm sure she was paid by Mattel to come in and do that. So she's somewhat professional influencer, whatever you want to call these people. But so I don't think she's probably really a Masters of the Universe fan per se, but I mean, you got to give her credit. She seemed to have done her homework. She seemed to did her homework and knew what at least seemed to present herself as knowing what she was talking about. So, I give her credit for that. But I don't think she was like a real Masters of the Universe fan. And if you go look at her YouTube channel, she has no content about action figures or anything like that. So, she's not really an expert. I wouldn't call her an expert on the subject in any shape or form, but and that's where I go back to somebody like Pixel Dan, who, you actually go look at Pixel Dan's YouTube channel and you go look at her YouTube channel. Pixel Dan has more subscribers than she does. So you could even argue that Pixel Dan has more influence than she does, but they went with her. And I'm just using Pixel Dan as an example here because obviously Pixel Dan, one of his main focuses is Masters of the Universe, and he has worked, closely with Mattel in the past. So they call it a. I mean, what else would you call it? But it's a monorail. I mean, a monorail is just a track that goes around in the air. I'm not 100% sure. Unless you just want to keep it on the card back, I probably wouldn't buy it, another one if you already have the previous one. But I won't say 100% that it's the exact same figure because I honestly don't know. But I don't think there's enough of a difference to worth, again, the, unless you want to just keep it on the Return of the Jedi card back. If you already have Admiral Akbar, I probably wouldn't recommend you buy another one. Well, and I will say, I thought the lady yesterday did a much better job hosting that live stream than those guys that Hasbro hired for. To me, at least, they were less annoying. Um, None of those guys are, I doubt, are really huge, action figure collectors in any shape or form. But I didn't find the lady yesterday to be annoying, and she seemed to do her research on everything that she was talking about, so she didn't come off like an idiot. Why do companies hire people who don't care about their products or either talk about or showcase them? It's hard to say. I mean, a lot of guys that you see on YouTube, they're not professional. I mean, well, a professional is basically somebody who gets paid, but you can tell. So if you ever watch like a Toy Galaxy video, that guy, sounds like a professional. I don't know a lot about his background, where he comes from, or anything like that, but I feel like, he's done work, he's done voiceover work, or things along those lines. So he puts, and he has an actual producer who, does most of his editing and stuff on his videos. So you go watch a Toy Galaxy video, and it's a much more professionally presented video than some guy just shooting a video in his basement, which I put myself in that category. I don't spend a lot of resources trying to create, super professional videos here. I'm just here really just talking to you guys. But you look at somebody like a Toy Galaxy, and they do a much better, a more professional, they put on a more professional type video than a good percentage of the guys that make videos that deal with action figures. And so, Pixel Dan does a pretty good job with that type of thing. I think he's definitely improved over the years. And so again, when it comes to Masters of the Universe, like, I would not recommend a Pixel Dan hosting a Marvel Legend live stream, but Masters of the Universe, I definitely think he could have probably done a pretty solid job there. But why they didn't hire and pay Pixel Dan to come in and host that event, and they chose this lady, I have no idea. But you know that I brought this topic up on Facebook this morning, where there are a lot of these guys who get accused for being shills. Okay, a lot of YouTuber, that's become a very popular term with a lot of these YouTubers, is they're called shills. And to me, a shill is somebody who gets paid to essentially promote a product. They probably really don't know much about the product, or whatever they're talking about. They're reading off of a clipboard or something, and so they're just paid. Most of the guys that you see making videos on YouTube about action figures, whether it's reviews or what have you, they're just fans. They're not, they might make a few dollars here and there from YouTube revenue or something, if they're lucky, but they're just fans. They're passionate fans. In fact, you might argue some are a little too passionate, right? I mean, I see some of these guys, and they seem to dedicate so much of their time and energy. I got to assume most of these guys have full-time jobs, something that actually pays them a living wage so that they can put food on their table. And so on top of that, working a 40-hour job or what have you, they're then turning around, coming home, and making these videos and stuff. So that's a passionate fan. Now, granted, a passionate fan can be biased. If you live, eat, and breathe, I've said this before, if you live, eat, and breathe Marvel Legends, you're probably going to have a little bit of bias and see everything Marvel Legend wise in a very positive light. That doesn't mean you're shilling, because those guys they're not being paid by Hasbro. They're not, if they're lucky, they might get an occasional free toy or something, but certainly nothing that warrants all the time and energy that they're putting in to covering those products. So when I hear people use that term shill, it's like, I feel it's like laughable, because it's either somebody has no clue about how any of this stuff works, or they're just deliberately trolling for the sake of trolling. But you might, if Pixel Dan was getting hired, and I don't even, if I was Pixel Dan, and I had Mattel wanted to hire me to host an event like this live stream and pay me money, that would be a huge career accomplishment. If you set out to create, this huge YouTube following and things like that, and you've got the company that, obviously Pixel Dan started out as a fan, right? But if he got to that level of being a professional, where he's got the toy companies paying him to host an event like the live stream, that would be a huge accomplishment. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but at least you could say, oh, well, look, Mattel's paying him to shill this Eternia playset to us. So you would at least maybe, I don't think it's really a legitimate complaint, but at least it would have a little more basis of reality if you were to call him a shill under those circumstances. But he's not getting paid. They went and hired this lady that probably knows very little about Masters of the Universe. So that's where, I kind of laugh when I see that term get used. I'm, you know, I don't consider myself a shill, but I've at least successfully created. I turned something that was my hobby into a successful business. The websites. My job is to bring you guys information and news, but I don't spend all this time and energy without expecting to get something in return for it. I've got to be able to make a living from it. And so I've been lucky enough to create websites that generate enough traffic to allow me to make enough revenue. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not, but it allows me to be able to do this on a daily basis. Some of these guys that I see do all this content daily, and they're getting very little from it. I oftentimes think they're crazy. I'm like, dude, go be with your family. Go get a life. um, if you're not able to make a living from this kind of stuff, then I wouldn't be recommending that you spend every waking hour, making videos or what have you. But yeah, I certainly helped 100%. But Toy Fair magazine, I have every issue of Toy Fair magazine, or at least most of them. I maybe missed a few of the last issue when they increased the magazine to like the full size and stuff. I probably missed some of those, but I was a fan of Toy Fair magazine, and I give Toy Fair magazine a lot of credit for kind of laying the groundwork to allow me to create what I've created. But most of these guys are not shills. They're just diehard fans who are passionate about something and have tried to, do something to kind of help that hobby that they love. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't, as people have gained followers and stuff, that it doesn't sometimes go to their heads, or, they aren't, there are definitely people who are trying to get attention and things like that. So I'm not saying everyone's perfect, and I'm obviously not, or not obviously, but I'm definitely not telling you that you should like every YouTuber or like their content. But I am telling you that most of these guys are just fans. They're dedicated fans, and they're not getting paid or being, lavished in free toys from these toy companies. Coco says the Toy Fair price cut. Yeah. And they used to have their own exclusives that they would do, their action figure exclusives, and it was always amazing how those exclusives would go up in value in the price cut. I did not use their price guide a whole lot, but I did, Toy Fair had good content. Before the internet really caught on, Toy Fair was a great resource to go get information about the action figures. I mean, when I was a little kid, it was the toy catalogs. It was Sears and J.C. Penney's and Service Merchandise. Every year you get those toy catalogs, and that's where you would find out about the latest new releases. But those years leading up before the internet really caught on, Lee's Tomart's Toy Fair magazine. Toy Fair magazine was the most successful of those toy magazines, but I always liked Lee's and Tomart's as well. So, but then the internet came along, and that allowed people to get the information faster, usually for free, and that's what killed the print magazines. And yes, I was a part of that. So Commander Bond, well, these machines, I mean, this is my business and my hobby. So there are advantages to combining your hobby and being able to make a living from it. There's disadvantages too. It definitely sometimes takes away the fun from the hobby. So, but but and I have a wife who works, so I'm not a solo income. It's a two income family, and I'm 50 years old. I didn't start out, when I was 20 years old, I didn't have a setup like this in my basement. So, you know, hard work that can pay off for you 100%, but I am no millionaire. I am not, you know, I'm just not. I wish I was. Believe me, I wish I was a millionaire, but I'm not. Well, they are, unfortunately, arcade one ups have gone up. So most, an average arcade one up machine costs about $700. But yeah, I mean, these aren't any more expensive than a HasLab, to be honest. So these are just things that I chose to spend my money on. But yeah, I should. I will tell you the best thing, the biggest advantage that my wife and her employment has provided with me is because I'm self-employed. Things like health insurance come through her employment. So I that's something I don't have to pay for through my business. So that has definitely been a big help. But, again, I have a decent sized house, but I don't live in a mansion. I have, I'm able to put food on my table. I'm able to support, care for my animals. We don't have kids. So that's another big advantage for me as far as, if I had kids, I probably would not have a lot of the stuff that you see behind me. So, that's just something to keep in mind. And when I started doing these websites, I worked a full-time job. I I started these sites on the side and I built them up over the years. And I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I was a good 10 years probably into this before I was able to quit a full-time job and do this solely. So, it wasn't like I just snapped my finger one day and started doing, these websites and such. So there was a lot of years where I was working 40 hours a week and then coming home or on my lunch break. I mean, when I started these websites, social media wasn't even a thing, and cell phones were just kind of starting out and things like that. So, but whether it was my lunch break or I would have to take off work, like when I would go to cover a toy fair or San Diego, I'd have to take off work. I'd have to use my vacation time to go cover these events for the websites. So that was my vacation. And I know some of you are thinking, oh, wow, you had to go to San Diego Comic Con. That would be a vacation. But when you're going for work, when you're going to cover these events and that's your focus, it definitely, those events are not that fun. So Jerry, it did. I not my Walmart. My Walmart quit carrying arcade one up machines, but yes, I have seen people finding the Simpsons. Even if I had seen the Simpsons for that cheap, I probably wouldn't have gotten it because I don't really have the room for it, and I was never a huge fan of that game. But Lord Venger. No, that's a good question. And me and my wife have definitely had conversations like that. So, you know, a month or so ago, I ended up selling a lot of the stuff that I had in the storage facility, and honestly, that was one of the reasons. Is what is because like if I pass away before I don't know which one of us is going to live longer, whether it's going to be me or my wife. But if my wife outlives me, she doesn't know much about this stuff. She doesn't know what's valuable or what's not. So, you know, I ended up selling a lot of that stuff just because I didn't want to have I didn't want her to have to deal with all that kind of stuff. So, obviously I still have stuff, and I have cousins and nieces, so I may end up not donating, but I may end up, giving them some of the stuff that you see here if they want it. But you know my wife will end up probably having to sell much of this stuff because you can't take it with you. Kyle says he calls. I mean, hopefully, knock on wood, that's not something I'll have to worry about for a long time. And I just turned 50, back in September, so like this month I've got to go get a colonoscopy. So hopefully I will, it's just a routine thing that you're supposed to do. Well, originally it used to be when you turn 50, which I waited for, but now they say you should do it when you turn 45. But those are things as you get older you got to start thinking about. But that's one of the fun things I get to do this month is I get to go to the doctors and do a colonoscopy. And so they can see if make sure I don't have anything like colon cancer or anything like that. That's a good question. If you could be buried with one action figure, what action figure would you want to be? As far as I know, yes. 3M, yes. uh, like like several weeks before my birthday, I got an AARP application. I haven't filled it out yet, but I'm going to because you actually get some good benefits through AARP. But yes, this will be my first, but hopefully Robo, your medical reasons aren't too serious. But yeah, this will be the first one I get, and I'm not expecting any issues, but you never know. Corn Viper, is anyone embarrassed to tell their family or coworkers they collect action figures? I'm not, but I'm sure some people are. Now I will tell you, I mean, my mom passed away, years ago, but she was still alive when I started doing these websites, and I remember having to try and explain to her like how I could make a living, doing these websites. Like, she just she didn't really understand. And and my dad, who had had a heart attack, and was in the hospital, and we were in his hospital. He came through it okay, but we were sitting in the hospital, and one of the nurse techs who was a guy came in, and I was working on the website because again, one of the downsides to being self-employed and running websites like this is you always have to take it with you. As long as you have a laptop and internet, I can work on my websites, but I can't really just like walk away from these websites for days on end. It's not terribly feasible. So that's one of the downsides. But I was working on. I had my laptop with me, and I was working in the hospital room. My dad was sleeping, and I was just in there working on the laptop. And this nurse technician comes in, and he sees me working on TNI, and apparently he was a big fan of the website, and he started saying, "Oh, you go to this web," like he didn't even realize he didn't realize that TNI was my website. He thought I was just like looking at the website. So he was like, "Oh yeah, I like that website too." And then I told him it was my website. And then the guy this was like I do not consider myself any kind of celebrity in any way. And with the whole YouTube stuff, that definitely has become more of a thing. But this guy was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe, that's your website and stuff." And so he was like sitting there kind of gushing over me having, that I was the one behind this website. And like my dad, that was the first time my dad had kind of seen like that people actually went to my websites and stuff and stuff. So that was a really cool thing for me that, this guy, it wasn't that the guy was like gushing over me and my website, but it was that he was doing it in front of my dad, and that my dad for the first time kind of understood, that I had created something that people were actually using it and reading. So, but I mean, I've never, I mean, even through high school I've collected comics and action figures and stuff through high school, college and stuff. And it's never been something I've tried to keep a secret from people. It is who I am. So, um, and I found more often than not, people's reactions are generally, "Oh, that's really cool," or things like that. I've never really found somebody like I said, my parents definitely kind of didn't understand what it was that I was doing, but I haven't found that people look at you funny or whatever if they see that you collect action figures or comics or stuff. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that these things have become more mainstream over the years, but no, I have no issue telling somebody that I collect action figures or comics or anything like that. Robo says my parents could care less, but my kids think I I mean I have nieces and stuff who will come and visit, but I don't know what it would be like to have kids. Like, I mean, I've seen like, people make jokes about it, like, your kid, like telling your kid not to touch your collection and stuff, but I don't know. And I feel like I see some of these guys that like on YouTube that have kids, and I see them like kind of trying to bring their kids into it. But I almost feel like eventually that's going to have a negative effect. Like their kids aren't going to want to have anything to do with action figures when they get older, because like, I mean, when you were a kid, did you really want to do the same things that your parents did? I mean, it's almost like, I don't know. I will tell you that I am very lucky and I'm very fortunate. If you had asked me 20 years ago if I would still be running these websites, and I would tell you, no, no fucking way. I never dreamed that I would have as much success with these sites as I have. And I think I've told you guys this before, that my original intent was to open a comic book store, and I started selling stuff online, and then I started doing the news on the side, and it ended up I found I enjoyed doing the news aspect of it than trying to sell toys. So, but my original goal had always been to open up like my own comic and toy store. But 20 years ago when I started doing this, I would have never dreamed that I would still be doing it. Now there are definitely days where it's very frustrating. Um, and again, one of the downsides of turning your hobby into something that you do as a career is it does take away, it saps out a lot of the fun of it. But I always looked at it as, if you're going to do something in life, most careers or most jobs, you end up spending a good portion of your life doing it. And I decided early on that it was better to do something that you liked and spend all that time on something you liked than doing something you hated. So I understand that not everybody is fortunate enough, and that's where I say I was really lucky and fortunate, and not everyone is that lucky and fortunate to be able to have that choice. But if you have the choice, to me, it's better to spend all that time, energy, and such on something you like than something you don't. But again, on the flip side, it does take away some of the fun. I started doing triathlons and stuff because collecting had become as much of a job as it was just a hobby because of the website. So I basically went and found something else to be my hobby. Um, Even though, I mean, obviously I still collect action figures, but so there are give and takes with all of that kind of stuff. But Lord Finger. I'm not sure what the first part, but my dad pretty much like nothing but Andy Griffith and Bush. I don't even know what bush hogging is. My dad was a big Murder She Wrote fan. 3M says two nephews and niece also have two brothers who collect action figures. Yeah, I have a sister who's older and she lives in a totally different state, but she was never into action figures. And um I have a nephew who's actually um who's an adult. He's in his 30s now, but he's actually been has gotten into action figure collecting, which has been pretty cool. But like, and when I was in high school, I had friends who collected action figures and comics, but most of my adult friends don't actually collect action figure. They don't look it down on me for collecting action figures and stuff, but they're not collecting action figures and stuff. So most of my adult friends are not action figure collectors. So I that's another little bit of a downside is like I don't have a lot of people to other than virtually to share my hobby with. And my wife, I mean, my wife's a huge Sesame Street fan, so that's kind of like, when we first met, that's what kind of attracted me to her is that, I loved how she loved Sesame Street and stuff. But, she doesn't collect action figures or stuff. She does collect some Sesame Street stuff, like Legos and a few Sesame Street and Muppets action figures, but she's not what I would call an action figure collector. Lord Wenger says, Bush hog is a piece of machinery you pull behind a tractor. See, I learned something new there. I don't know much about farming, so. Corn Viper says, my mom bought us kids new toys every time we went to the grocery shop. Yeah, my mom bought me, as a kid, my mom did more of the toy shopping for me than my dad. I did not. I don't think I ever told her about Cookie Monster, the Cookie Monster Haslab. I don't know. I mean, she doesn't collect a lot of stuffed animals, so I don't know if she would have been interested in that or not. But like I would get her. I don't know if you'll remember the old Palisades Muppets figures, but I would get her those. My mom, 3M says his mom got him interested in a lot of stuff she didn't care about, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers. See, my mom was a huge science fiction fan. Like she got me into Star Trek and Star Wars. I mean, my mom took me to see Aliens when I was a little kid, so um, I mean, she wasn't. I mean, she got me toys as a kid because things like Star Wars toys, but obviously she wasn't collecting Star Wars toys. But she loved the Star Wars movies and the Star Trek movies and things like that. So she definitely had a lot of influence on me in regards to that. I, yeah, I don't know. I think I probably told her about it, but like I said, she's never really been into stuffed animals, so I don't think that was like something she was ever really interested in. I think I maybe told her about it and how it like failed or anything, but John, yeah, basically, I, you know, it's difficult. I mean, just doing like I try and do at least 3 to 5. I try and average 3 to 5 videos on this channel, and that plus running the sites just takes up most of my time. Not even necessarily time, but like doing a video and just like going out there and talking or whatever, it can be draining. It can be great. It's great to share things and it's great to hear your opinions, but it's also it can be draining. So like doing multiple videos in a day, when you do it over and over and over, I find to be very mentally draining. So I tried to do the second YouTube channel thing and things like that, but it gets very hard to do. If all I did was YouTube, I could probably maybe do it more, but just keeping up with this channel and then, like I said, all the stuff with the websites, that pretty much uses up most of my time. And honestly, I don't, there are times where like I want to put more energy into this channel per se, but then, I have to weigh it. Like, I mean, YouTube is never going to be, I'm never going to be like this huge YouTube celebrity no matter what. I am who I am. I'm not super entertaining. I'm not super, I have a very monotone voice. So, you know, I, I realize that I'm never going to be like this huge internet celebrity type person. So I try and do the news videos. Like I said, as long as there's news to warrant it, I try and do like 3 news videos a week and then like at least one, live stream and maybe a fifth video sometimes, but probably more times than not, I only end up doing 3 or 4 videos a week. But, there are definitely times where I'm like, what can I do to improve this channel or, but then oftentimes just time constraints and things like that end up getting in the way. I I will be honest with you. I mean PewDiePie like is now he is a millionaire. That guy has made millions of dollars from all this stuff. So if you want to know what a millionaire is, go look at somebody like that or Logan Paul or somebody like those guys. Those guys are millionaires. They've made fortunes from their content that they've created over the years. And there's a part of me that definitely would love to be able to do that. But then there's also this part of me. There's a part of me that kind of likes to be kind of under the radar. Like I can sit here and just kind of talk freely with you guys, but like I don't have to, I don't really have to worry about somebody if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be crucified or I have to hire a bodyguard for security protection or something like that. There's definitely I don't think I would really want to be that successful and that popular, on YouTube, for those reasons. I mean, I look at somebody like Shartimus, and Shartimus has over 600,000 subscribers, and he has a lot of dedicated fans, but he also has a lot of haters. He has a lot of people that just go out of their way to talk shit about him, and I mean, I'm not saying that everyone has to like Shartimus Prime, and I'm not saying he's never done anything, said stupid things or what have you, but I feel like there's just a lot of people that give him shit just because he's been successful and he has so many subscribers and stuff. So I I definitely I'm whenever you make public videos and you say public things, you're putting yourself out there, and there's always the possibility somebody's going to not like what you say and they're going to maybe talk shit about you or whatever. And that's just something you have to accept when you put yourself out there in the public eye in any way. But but I definitely, I don't necessarily regret that I'm not, I have like hundreds of thousands of followers or what have you, because there's definitely a lot of bad things that come along with that kind of thing. Mr. B, I'd still like to take a picture with you and hang it on my wall. I don't know if you're being sincere. I mean, that's cool. I wouldn't want to take, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't view myself as a celebrity in any way. So it's always hard for me to look at, somebody, if I've helped you in the hobby, if I've helped you bring you information about stuff in the hobby, then that is great satisfaction for me. But I don't want any of you thinking I'm like somebody special or better than you in some way, because I'm not. I'm really not. I've been very lucky. I've been very fortunate. But but any of you guys out there, if you put the time, energy, and dedication into it, could probably accomplish the same things that I've accomplished. Um, so I just I get very uneasy when, like when I go to a convention and people come up to me and say, "Oh, can I get my picture with you?" and stuff like that. It's not that I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. It's just like I just have a hard time viewing myself in that light. But I, again, all you guys who watch these, who tune in every night, or every, not every night, but every week, you guys, you're great. I really appreciate you guys who support the channel, support the websites and everything. So, I mean, you guys are really what keep me motivated and keep me doing what I do. Well, I mean, I have been like at San Diego where people will come up to me, especially in recent years with YouTube. I mean, back in the early days, I mean, nobody knew me personally. They knew my websites, but they didn't, if you saw me at a convention, you wouldn't know who I was, or unless I had like a TNI shirt on or something. And even then you might not really know who I was. So, before YouTube and stuff, you know, people knew my websites, but they didn't really know who I was. But definitely in more recent years, when and it's been several years since I've been to a convention, but when I would go like to San Diego and stuff, I would have people come up to me and say, "Oh man, I really love, what you do, and hey, can I get your picture or what have you?" And I mean, it's a really cool feeling, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm just this guy. Why do you want to get a picture with me? It's just it's it's just kind of weird to me. And I am not, I'm from an older generation, I guess, so that's also probably part of it. I also I hate looking at pictures of, the other thing is I do hate looking at pictures of myself. So I always feel like the camera, I mean, I'm not like, I mean, I have been in better shape, you know, definitely for a time there. I was doing triathlons, doing Ironmans and stuff when I was in really good shape, but I definitely, I am probably have more weight than I should, but then the camera always does add more weight than it does. So I always, when I see myself, I always feel like I'm this like fat ass on in the picture, and I'm like, I do not like having my picture. I never gotten. I mean, even like a Hollywood celebrity paying somebody for a picture, I've always felt is ridiculous. I know, there are definitely celebrities who do that, but you'll never see me paying any celebrity money to have their to get their picture. But rest assured, if you saw me at a convention or something and asked to take my picture, I would never charge you for even if I had like, a million followers on YouTube, I would still not expect you to pay to have a picture taken with me. Well, if I auction my hat, then I won't have my hat to wear. Besides, I got, you know, this is one of the hats I got for doing an Ironman triathlon. So, it is one of my favorite hats, but I had to work pretty hard to get this. Yeah, but unfortunately, I look like Homer Simpson more times than not. All right, well, it's 9 o'clock, so we've gone late, but so I think we're gonna call it a night. But again, as always, guys, really appreciate you guys tuning in. I want to probably the first week of December, I'm gonna do a live stream. It's gonna be like a Toys for Tots live stream. So like, I don't normally ask you guys to do super chat donations, but on that particular one, I'm gonna ask you guys to donate, and then I'm gonna take the money you guys donate and donate it to Toys for Tots, and we're gonna do some giveaways. So you'll get something in return as well, besides just doing a good deed. But look for that probably in the first week of December. It's probably going to be a slow news week, or news month, I should say, November and December. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Hasbro's going to do any live streams between now and the end of the year. Hopefully they'll do at least a few, but I don't know. So might be pretty slow on the news front for a little bit, but definitely, I'll keep coming at you guys. Lord Venger, awesome, man. Always appreciate it. But yeah, so we're gonna call it a wrap tonight. But thanks for tuning in. We'll see how the Eternia playset does, if it's gonna get to 10,000 or not. Let me see if it's gone up any since. And we're at 8,410, so it's gone up 3 more backers since we last checked. But I think it'll get to 10, but we'll see. And then if it does get to 10, we'll see if I end up getting one for myself or not. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence. But anyway, guys, have a great evening. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later.
Hey, thanks for watching today's video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so alerted every time I upload a new video. And be sure to head over to the Toy News International and Marvelous News Message Sports communities. It's a great place to talk toys and win cool contests like $100 store credits to Big Bad Toy Store. And remember, action figures are great.